So we can all use some wisdom in our lives, wisdom to make decisions, wisdom just to be able to have greater situational awareness, or even just wisdom to have self-control. And in today's video, I want to talk through the book of Proverbs on what it says about oversharing, the sins of the tongue, right? Proverbs 10:19 says, "Where there are many words, transgression is unavoidable. But he who restrains his lips is wise." In Proverbs 13:3, "The one who guards his mouth preserves his life. The one who opens wide his lips comes to ruin." We've probably all met somebody, and I've had this experience in my own life. And as I'm creating content, it's more so what the Lord is bringing into my awareness as I continue down my path of faith, right? Our own journey. One thing that, and I'm sure we've all been in this position before, where you have a conversation with somebody and they overshare. And what happens is then, for the most part, the person who's receiving that gets uncomfortable. And the entire conversation, potentially even the relationship, gets hindered because of the information that was not supposed to be shared. And so we can often see this inside, especially Christian circles. Like you'll have people who are in community groups or just in ministry in general, and they don't have a filter of how much they should share with other people. And I understand that there's the sin of partiality, which I've created a video on, where you don't want to judge somebody who's low or judge somebody who's high. But at the same time, you don't want to be the person who is the sinner, who is just sharing and blabbing a bunch of stuff because you have no clue what you could be missing out by doing that, if that makes sense. You may sit down with somebody who may offer you a position or a job and you share too much information. You may sit down with somebody who could potentially be a spouse, but you just share way too much information. And I want to make a massive distinction here. This is not being fake. This is not omitting the truth. This is not lying. This is being responsible and aware of what you communicate to the other person. And I want to just make sure that that's so important to understand, because we can fall into too much talking, but then at the same time, we can fall into not enough talking and we're actually lying or omitting the truth. You don't want to fall in, obviously, in either one of those categories. For the sake of this video, this is about the words that come out of our mouth. We should be vulnerable when the situation presents itself, right? When the conversation naturally gravitates towards something, then you can bring that up. It's like if you were sitting down with somebody who was you were dating them to get to know them, and then they just all of a sudden just started talking about all their previous boyfriends or girlfriends, where the conversation wasn't even going there. And now you have this onslaught of information that you're just like, I didn't need all that right now. You know, maybe there could have been a time where we potentially were led into those discussions, but right now it's just way too much for me. Or maybe you're somebody who's talking about, hey, this person's pursuing me and that person's pursuing me, and you're coming off in this boastful place when realistically all that's doing is showing that there's some sort of insecurity, or you're trying to get somebody to chase you by sharing all of this information. And this list can go on for hours, right? Days, weeks. The point of this video is that we should be wise with our tongues, because they steer the direction of our lives, as the book of James says. And if we don't do that, if you are a man of God or a woman of God, you will have times where you step into sin, right? And you may not recognize it at the moment, but there's going to be an effect of that. It's going to be hardship. It's going to be not hardship that God's refining you and taking you through a certain circumstance because he wants to prune you. No, this is just going to be an invitation to destruction that God is going to get you to use to get your attention. If somebody's constantly oversharing information, eventually that person's going to snap out of it and realize, okay, I'm doing that. There's going to be that conviction. And God oftentimes uses our outside experience to get our attention. Not always, of course. We don't want to be a new ager looking for signs under every single rock. But we need to be aware of what we are discussing, especially to whom we are discussing. If you've just met somebody, it's probably not wise to tell them your deepest and darkest sins. If you're in a massive group of people, it's probably not wise to do that, even if it's a community group, right? If you're around other Christian men and women, it's still not wise to do that. There may be a certain extent where you share information and that's appropriate. We should ask God for the right things. James 4:3 says, you have not because you ask not. And when you do ask, you ask for wrong motives. We need people we can confide in. We need people who we can share those deep parts of our hearts with. Ask for them. God will deliver those people into your space. That's part of the walk of being a man or a woman of God, pursuing Christ. You need mentorship. You need people above you who you could be vulnerable with. But recognize who they are. Not everybody needs to know all of your business. Not everybody needs to know all of your information. God may be trying to bring people into your life to connect you with somebody else. And if you overspeak to that one person, it's going to wreck what he was trying to do. So again, all throughout Proverbs and all throughout James as well, it talks about the tongue. I should say all throughout the Bible it talks about it. It's just a fair way to describe that. It talks about the sins of the tongue. We have to be able to have awareness of what comes out of our mouth. And typically what comes out of our mouth is what's in the heart. And Jesus says this. He says, it's not what goes into the body that causes the sins. It's not what you're drinking or you're eating. We don't, obviously, of course, we don't want to fall into drunkenness and whatnot. It's not what goes in, though. It's what comes out, because that's what's in your heart. And that's Matthew 15, if you want to read that. It's the pride. It's the anger. It's the boasting. Oh, this person's dating me, or I'm pursuing that. It's the boasting. We're trying to get things that God naturally gives us and blesses us with. James 1:17, every perfect gift comes from above, right? We should never have to manipulate situations to get things. And if we are, we're completely self-deceived and missing the mark. And we just need a little bit of a wake-up call, awareness into that. And so I want to just say, I'm not creating this video from somebody who's mastered this. The people who are really close to me know this. I struggle with this. Where you feel gifted, the enemy will come and try to corrupt it. I've always worked, for the most part of my life, using my mouth in broadcasting, content creation, sports media. Now, how can the enemy come in and corrupt that? Share too much, talk too much. And the last thing I want to say as well, when you're around people, God oftentimes uses people to help you, right? Like you may, and I'm sure many of you have had this experience. You have a conversation with somebody and it's like, wow, I really needed to hear that. If you're the one always talking, you can quite literally miss out on something that was so profound or life-changing, or maybe it's just something you just really needed in that moment and you disqualified yourself from it because of how much you're talking. So I just give everybody the invitation, including myself. Lord, help me be wise with the words that come out of my mouth. Help me not to rush to say things, rush to speak, whatever it may be. Help me not to gossip about other people. Help me not to say things of, oh, look at that. That person's sinning. That person does this. That person's dealing with that. That's none of your business. You should, if you see those things, you should be able to go and close your door and pray for that person. You should not be sharing those things with anybody else unless it's applicable. And in those cases, it's very rare, very specific, and we won't even get into that into this video. But you understand what I'm saying? We don't want to be gossips. We don't want to be over speaking. We don't want to block what could be for us. There may be an opportunity where we sit down with somebody and that person has the exact experience or memory or thought that is going to bless our lives. And I don't know about you guys, but I've had those experiences where I've sat down with people And I'm like, man, I left there and I feel so filled up, and it's exactly what I needed to hear. And it propelled me forward in life. And I've had times where I've sat down with people and I've spoken way too much, and I've recognized a little bit of a hindrance in our relationship. All right. I want to keep this video at 10 minutes. If you guys got any value in this video, please subscribe or leave your questions or comments down below. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Hope to see you in the next video.